All right, we're back. This is CSIS 2200, Managing Information Systems, Part 4. We left off with talking about how the internet has disrupted industries, and the healthcare industry was the next one on the list. And there is all sorts of things that the internet has done for healthcare, and this has been probably the most recent one, was you can download an app on your phone. This one was called Babylon. It's by TELUS, the internet's provider called TELUS. And you can actually have a FaceTime with your doctor without going into the office, which is pretty amazing. Plus, on top of that, you get your e-health. You can log into your e-health and get access to all your record information. It was unheard of 10, 15 years ago. So this is going to change, I believe, healthcare quite a bit. Now, whether that's going to be better or worse, yet to be seen. Personally, I like to go in to see the doctor and talk to them. And I find there's some advantages to that, but then once I leave the doctor's office, I don't have a record of that. I just have a memory of that. With the online, there's a record of it, and we can track that, and we can do data analytics, and we can track our health as time progresses. So there are pros and cons to both. So I do use the online version, but I do like to go in once in a while and see the healthcare practitioner. Just like education, I believe that online has a lot of advantages, but I still personally believe in a hybrid model. I would rather see my students once a week and have the rest of the week for online resources. So at least we have that human contact. We touch base. We keep people motivated. There's a little more connection there, but that you can still go back and access online. They call that a hybrid learning environment. And personally, I like that model for myself, and I feel it's the best model for education. You get the best results, I think, for students. After COVID is over, I'm sure that will return and we'll get back to a hybrid model. Anyway, there's some examples here about the healthcare industry and what that's done. There is some extreme technologies in this area where there's, even performing surgery at a distance. Politics is another one. You think about what the internet has done for politics, especially in the U.S. election, how it's impacted and influenced voters. It's incredible what the internet has done with politics. Anyway, I won't get into this in a lot of detail because I think it was spending a lot too much time with that, but you can read up a little more if you're interested in how politics has been disrupted by the internet. It definitely has empowered voters, that's for sure. The internet has put more control, more information, more disinformation in front of users. So you have to actually pay more attention now because information that you're getting, is it accurate? What's really interesting as of the time of this recording was a popular story about social media banning certain political views so that people couldn't see it. So if there was a political controversy, the social media is now filtering and blocking, which in a sense can influence the voting direction of a candidate, which is definitely a downside, because these internet companies, these large social internet like Twitter and Facebook and others, Google, YouTube, can motivate people in a direction with information that is not accurate. So there's a big problem right now at the time of this recording that's happening. Anyways, let's move on to a new concept here. So we've talked a bit about the internet. Let's talk about the intranet. Now, an intranet is simply just a network within an organization. It's an internal or internalizing your internal network. It's not the internet where it's external. It's inside an organization. So if you want probably the simplest example I can show you of an intranet would be the douglascollege.ca. Douglascollege.ca is a website that provides all of this information as it pertains to the company, the internal network. Now we have another network that's not for students, it's for the staff and faculty, and this gives additional resources, and that's another part of our intranet. If you've ever heard of the company called SharePoint, it's a Microsoft product, and it basically shares resources within an organization, creating an internal network. So that's the intranet. and it supports the business activities within an organization. So it's used by employees of the company, the internal process. So I will use my intranet at Douglas College to access any resources that I need. Things like payroll systems. Like students don't need to know about the payroll system because it has nothing to do with students. So that would be on our intranet. Our human resources, our policies, our procedures, different forms, communications with other people, all those types of services would be on our intranet. And companies also allow trusted business partners to access their intranet. So that means that if a company works with Douglas, I'll give you an example. Oracle is the database management system that the college uses. Actually, there's another company name there, but I don't want to give that away. Work with our college. They will have access to our intranet, and they're given rights and permission. It's like a miniature or a mini internet is the intranet. The intranet works with similar protocols and OSI model communications as the internet does. It's slightly different than a local area network, where it's just a network. And the intranet is protected from the internet because this is internal information specifically geared to that company. So if you, for example, want to go to Amazon, you can go to Amazon.com or CA and access their customer information, but you can't access their back end. You can't get access to their intranet, to their local area network, because it sits behind a firewall. And you wouldn't have access to it. So here's kind of how it works in a graphical format. So within an organization, you have different players. You have individual contributors, business processes that need to be accessed, management projects that are going on. These are all different kind of the players within an organization, and you'd fall into something in here. Now within your intranet, they will have access to different resources. So these aren't internet resources, these are company resources that are available in the intranet. So even though the intranet will have a gateway to the internet, it'll go out onto the internet. It's through their intranet. So if I'm at Douglas College and I want to access the intranet, I'll use a proxy server that sits behind our intranet that gives me access to the internet. And the reason they do that is so that the people involved are logged. And I've talked about this in earlier videos in the privacy chapter. So when people are communicating out to the internet, the intranet tracks and logs that, because the company, for legal reasons, for security reasons, wants to keep track of that. They might have students that are doing stuff that they don't want. They can track that and log that. They also have access to their own company's e-business. So if it was Amazon, they'd have access to the Amazon.com site. They'd have all sorts of documents that support their company and policies, enterprise applications that have to do with their human resources, and hosting services, which would be all of their computer services that they distribute to their internal and external clients and customers. So that's kind of a summary, a simple look at how an intranet architecture would work within virtually every kind of company. Follows a similar model. So where do you fit? When you go into a company, you will be given a particular role, a job title. And that particular role will have certain privileges and access points to the intranet, will have certain access and privileges to different services within the company. Which ones do you get? It depends on what role you are in your company. How do you fit in? If you're running a managing information system inside your intranet, you will be given certain rights and privileges to that. And sometimes it'll be to a specific repository or storage location. You might have access to different access levels to different resources within a company. But you need to understand clearly what role are you playing with what system and what access, and understand how it all fits together within your intranet. So if we were going to compare the internet with the intranet, what are some of the key features? Well, on the internet, all the users, everybody has access to the internet. No one's really restricted. But to a company's intranet, only approved users have access to that private. You can think of an intranet as private, and this is public. How's that? So it's public and private. And geographical location, well, it's really, as I've said, you're not restricted with the internet. You could be anywhere on the planet as long as you have a NAP connection, you can access that. Now, the intranet, of course, is limited and located usually in a geographical location. It's within a company's municipal area network, like like they call that a municipal area network. The speed, of course, could be impacted. It could be slower because you're using the internet. There's so many different nodes and hops. You don't know where it's going to go. You're really at the discretion of who and which route you're taking. But when you have your own company, of course, it's a lot faster. So system critical things that companies use tend to be in-house and behind the intranet. They call this another word they call this is on-prem or on-premise. And this is off-prem. So it's on-prem and on-prem. So you'll hear those terms used a lot. So if you're using a SharePoint server, you could have an on-prem SharePoint server, or you could have you could outsource that to a third party and it's on the internet. But then there's the pros and cons. If you're using it within the company, it could be a lot faster to your users. If it's on the internet, it could potentially be slower. Security, another key factor in this process. It makes sense. If something is public, you have less security on the internet that you do than the intranet. So the intranet, you have more control, so it would be a lot more secure. So a question that might be asked of you, let's say a quiz question, could be something like, what are some of the advantages of the intranet over the internet? And you could say something like, well, it's restricted access use, it is faster, it has more security characteristics than the internet. And that's why companies do that. They have an internal network that they want to control their own company. They have more control compared to the public internet, that the similar services could be offered, but of course there's some downsides to that as well. So now you have a clear understanding between the internet and the intranet as it pertains to the entire globe and to the individual company. Now, there is a term called the extranet, and the extranet is basically taking multiple intranets and connecting them together. So creating an extranet. So it's creating a secure network of networks. So it's using internet and web technologies to connect intranets of business partners. So what they're doing here, and this is usually on more of a multinational scale. So someone like Amazon is a perfect example of how an extranet would work. Amazon would have their main network, their main intranet. And then what they do is they have thousands and thousands of business partners that they sell their products. And they connect those companies with their company. And what does that create? An extranet. So in a sense, that's what it is. It facilitates communication better between organizations that work together. And it creates, you think, well, communication on the internet's good, but that's true, but it's also protected. So on the internet, there is more of a risk. And when you're dealing with companies and trade secrets and policies and procedures, you don't want that out into the public. So what companies tend to do is they find trusted companies they want to work and partner with, and they create an extranet by connecting their intranets together using the internet technologies. All right, I hope that makes sense. All right, and the extranet, it's considered to be a type of this, what they call interorganizational system, or IOS. Now, I don't hear this a whole lot, but it's these transnational organizations that are usually global organizations. You don't find extranets with small companies. These are very large multinational companies, companies like Walmart or Facebook or and all the large companies. Let's just say that. You guys can come up with a bunch of examples. Now, what does it facilitate? It can facilitate an example of money transfer. And you got to think of when you're transferring money from a customer to a client, you want to be secure, obviously. So they use something called the electronic funds transfer, or ETF. And they also use the electronic data interexchange for transferring the data. Let's say this could be a sales order or an invoice. They want to make sure that that's protected. So companies will take their intranets and give permissions to other intranets, again, creating that extranet to do things like transfer money or transfer data or invoices, the things that are trade secrets or private information that they don't want really out on the internet. Applications, as I've already kind of alluded, ordering. If you want to order, you could do an EDI of a timely order. This could be a little bit faster. Of course, it's more secure. Companies feel more confident in that by creating an extranet to a partner company. Now, I don't know if that's really an advantage of allowing companies to reduce the internetworking costs. I can't really even give you an example, but I guess they're in these multinational companies. If they don't do this, there could be additional costs because there's maybe a security problem that could be required. So it requires a comprehensive security system anyways to manage all this, because you're dealing with companies that are in different countries that are transferring very sensitive information like money transfers. There's got to be a very high level of security for that. All right, so here's a model of a simple extranet architecture. And these clouds could be different companies. You might work for a company, and the company has an intranet. That company may have a partnership with some trading partner in a different city. So they create a virtual private network between the two to create an extra level of security so no one on the internet can really find out what these two are doing. And they give each other a certain amount of privileges and access to their internal intranet. Now remember, the data that's traveling is of course across the internet. They still use TCP/IP to communicate their data to these companies, but they control them individually. So this company here control what this company can see and access, and vice versa. This company over here might be another trading partner, and they do the same thing. Then there's remote employees that come into the company. Now that remote employee could work for this company, or it could work for this company, or that remote employee could access this intranet that then accesses this company right here. And what you're forming here is a extranet in a large multinational type of company. Of course, you've got customers that are coming in, they want to buy something. They might buy a product from Amazon, but Amazon doesn't actually produce it. They have to contact the trading partner. The trading partner has it. The trading partner then ships it to Amazon or ships it directly to the customer. All that has to be coordinated. And one of the best models for doing that, extranet architecture. All right, I'd like to talk a little bit about the next topic in the learning objectives here is the evolution of the internet. And this is really a fascinating evolution. I was really fortunate to get involved with this at the beginning, and I hope to progress through until the end of my days here. It started off with, I guess you might call it the Web 1.0, but what they're talking about here is Web 2.0 and 3.0 eras. And there's kind of definitive things that came to be during this process. So the Web 2.0, the trend was towards web applications with more interactive and traditional web applications that we tend to use today. Prior to that, we were in like a PC-based dial-up bulletin board communication, which was very high level of knowledge to access that information, very restricted amount of information. When Web 2.0 came out, it was really focusing around synchronizing. Web 1.0 was asynchronous. Basically, you could do email. In the early web days, it was email, or you could connect, post a board on a bulletin board, and then respond to it at a later date. So it was asynchronous. Web 2.0 was more of a synchronous type of web. The applications were more interactive than traditional web applications. It allowed for collaboration, or what they called e-collaboration is one of the key components of the Web 2.0. So it allowed people to get together, as you know, almost like a social media type of thing. Social networking was one of the key driving factors for the Web 2.0. It facilitated collaboration. So what this graph is over here is they're talking about the PC era. Then it evolved into the connection of the web. And during the early days of the web, we had things like bulletin board services. We had something called Gopher, which was Go for Some Information. VR, I'm not sure what VR was. Then there was the introduction of HTTP, which was the catalyst or the creation of really the 2.0. Was the bridge over, the crossover. A lot of programming languages were evolved at that time, and different services. In fact, Software as a service at the early days was a part of the 2.0. So it allowed the everyday user without a high level of knowledge, computer knowledge, to really access and get more information off the internet. So it was an evolutionary process, is what I'm trying to say. So the main focus was trying to make an intelligent web application using artificial intelligence technology. Do you think, well, artificial intelligence, isn't that sort of a modern development? Artificial intelligence has really been back in the early PC days when we came up with conditional statements like, if something happens, do that. If something else happens, do something else. Basically giving computers the ability to determine an outcome based on some input. So that was the early days of the Web 1 and the Web 2.0. And it was geared or tailored around online requests by users for looking up things and searching for things that they needed. That was really the goal at that time. So what happened was we evolved and we went into 2.1, which was a semantic web. And this semantic web was a term used to talk about how intelligent the web is. So how intelligent is the web was let me just go back. There it goes. So how intelligent did this semantic web, and what was the key feature? Well, the semantic web really became more intelligent, and it became more intelligent by correlating semantic databases together and being able to ask questions or query the database to give us more relevant information. And it was really the catalyst between launching into that 3.0 web, which started off in about 2010 to 2020. We're just coming out of Web 3.0, and we're moving into a whole new era of web that you guys are going to be working in and living and working in for sure. So one of the key features of the 3.0, the semantic web, was enabled computers to understand what they're displaying and how they're communicating, or how to communicate more effectively with one another. So it was, in a sense, becoming more intelligent than the 2, obviously. And this 4 is now becoming even more intelligent than 3. So we are moving into a 4.0, which is going to become an intelligent personal agent. And you see this already with devices like Alexa or Google. Like I'll say, okay, Google, what's the temperature today? And my Google... Okay, so it's a high of 13, a low of 4, my Google Assistant. So we've got these intelligent personal agents that are helping us. And this is going to have a phenomenal effect, I think, on how we're going to work and live online. There's just so many things that this is going to change, good and bad. The last thing I'll say about Web 4.0 that wasn't really in my slide here, but it should be mentioned, is artificial intelligence is being developed at an incredibly rapid rate, and the development of quantum computing, which is able to process at phenomenal speeds that we couldn't even conceive of just 5 years ago. And those two together are going to drastically impact. There's going to be a quantum leap, I believe, between the 2.3, the 3. From Web 3.0 to 4.0. It's going to be a quantum leap in what the internet's going to do. The web is going to become so much more intelligent, which is going to change so many industries. And that's something that I think all students should really think about carefully, because these managing information systems that you're being asked to do right now and work in is really in a 3.0 environment. But in the next 5 to 10 years, where is that going to go? And how is it going to impact your job? And how adaptable are you going to be in your career? They're talking about the legal profession being completely disrupted. We talked about industries that were disrupted. That's going to be escalated drastically with artificial intelligence and quantum computing. For example, the law industry. If you were asking a lawyer to do some sort of legal work, these AIs you can enter all the legal textbooks in a computer, and without bias can help you come up with the proper type of arguments or case or precedents that it would be almost impossible for a very skilled lawyer to do. And this will be done at almost virtually a very small cost compared to what a human could do it for. So if you're going into law, this is going to be a huge impact in that industry. The medical industry is going to be another one. Think about it. If you go to a doctor, you're relying on a doctor's schooled knowledge and ability to diagnose you. If you go to an AI with a quantum computer, it can go through every textbook and every case on the planet within seconds and come back with the most accurate diagnosis that it could possibly come up with. Now, how does that translate into other industries that you're going into? For example, accounting. How could AI and quantum computing impact accounting? I see this actually having a huge impact in accounting. Which areas does AI not impact? And that's hard to visualize at this early stage of development. We can't see the future yet, but we can anticipate how it's going, how it's evolving. So you really need to think about this, because your generation and you guys graduating out of school right now are going to be so impacted by this through your career. You guys have 30 to 40 years of work history. What areas are going to be less impacted? Some early reports I've looked at and read said that actually the trades are going to be less impacted because it requires physical interaction. But that could change too if you look at what Boston Dynamics is doing with robotics. A lot of these industries are going to be disrupted as well. So I don't mean to scare anybody by this, but I think it's worthwhile thinking about and having conversations around the area that you're pursuing, and will it be the same industry in 10 years? The internet is disrupting everything. So think about that. And let's go into the next topic.